world feels a bit toxic and blah these days, doesn't it? The same old people coming up with the same old solutions for big problems that still don't work. We need to change the game. Well, welcome to Women Advancing. Join me, host Kate Byrne, in this dynamic bi-weekly podcast, bringing together female founders, funders, and thought leaders. Listen to the people driving change, how they got there, how you can help, and yep, how you might just be the next one to advance. Proof that all ships rise with women at the helm. That's what happens when Women Advance with Kate Byrne. Hey everyone, it's your host of Women Advancing, Kate Byrne. Well, in this episode of Women Advancing, I'm going to sit down with Audrey Cooper, who I knew from my days at the San Francisco Chronicle. And she's the award-winning editor-in-chief of WNYC Public Radio and the first woman to lead that newsroom in its 100-year history. She was also the first female to lead the newsroom of the San Francisco Chronicle. Seems to be a little trend there. We're going to explore what it takes to drive innovation in legacy media, something definitely not always easy, leading to change, and then building newsrooms that reflect the communities they serve. It's probably why she and her team were among the first to actually become a finalist for the Pulitzer. Audrey goes ahead and she shares her candid insights on, navigating disruption and balancing mission and business, and why curiosity and courage are essential for leaders at every level. So regardless of whether you're passionate about journalism, trying to figure out how do I get started, you're into building an organizational culture that spans multiple generations and is full of inquiry and discovery, or the future of media, it's going to inspire you to think bigger about your own leadership journey and what's your style. When you're saying things, when you're embodying things, are people watching? Are they seeing and hearing what you want them to? Check it out. Forget to stay to the end where I share my KB takeaways. Oh my gosh, Women Advancing listeners, you're in for a treat today. Why, you might ask? Well, we have none other than Audrey Cooper, who is the Senior Vice President of News, and she's the Editor-in-Chief at New York Public Radio, otherwise known as WNYC. Audrey, welcome to Women Advancing.
Thank you.
Who may or may not know, Audrey and the team have actually been, how would I put it? Was it nominated for a Pulitzer?
We were a finalist for the Pulitzer. So anyone can nominate themselves, but there's only 3 finalists every year.
Which is huge and a great accomplishment. We're going to learn a bit more about how you were able to bring the team all together, get to that point. But let's start at the very beginning, my dear. Tell us a little bit about your path and how you got started.
I started in journalism as a baby reporter in a very tiny newspaper in a very tiny town in California. And I didn't know, I had no idea what I was doing. A lot of this theme will be fake it until you make it. And I think that's what I did from day one. So from there, I went to work at the Associated Press, and then I went to another newspaper where I became an editor. And that was I think for the purposes of your podcast, like that was the first time I was managing a staff. I was 24 years old.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that anyone put me in charge of 20 plus people at 24. It was wild, but one of the things that you probably know about me is I don't really like bosses. I didn't like to have a boss. So I had some bosses and I thought I could do that. I know what to do. And it was a very eye-opening first year as a manager, because I think anyone who steps into a new management role thinks, oh, I'm really good. In my case, I was really good at being a reporter. I'll just show everybody how I did things as a reporter, and then they'll see the genius of how I did things. And then I'll just fix everybody. And you find out very, very quickly that is not how you get people to do. It's not how you lead. It's nobody wants to be told exactly what to do. And they especially don't want to be told that by a 24-year-old woman. So it was a very steep learning curve, and they were very generous with me. And I figured, I think one of the things about me is I make a lot of mistakes, but I don't make them twice. And I really am I really, really think about what I want to accomplish and how to get people to follow you there. So I was an editor at that small little newspaper for 2 years until there was an opening at the San Francisco Chronicle, which was the big paper in Northern California. And I begged for a job there. I had begged for an internship there and never got one. And finally they hired me. And then it was like off to the races. So in 9 years, I went from like a beginning baby editor at the Chronicle to editor-in-chief. And I was the editor there for really 6 years. And then I got a call to maybe come to New York. And that's how I ended up in public radio.
Well, that's awesome. But I want to
hear a long story.
No. I want to hear a little bit more about making that switch. But before we go down that path, I'm really curious, why do you think they did give the 24-year-old the job to manage?
Or not.
But they must have seen something, obviously. I mean, I can imagine.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you've hired people, you can tell who's going to be a good, there's a little bit of it is charisma, I think, and interest. Like, I've thought I don't know if you've discussed this on the podcast at all, but I've thought a lot about Sheryl Sandberg's book and how the initial reaction to lean in and like the idea that women should really be like at the table and getting involved, and how that's kind of antithetical to our personalities and our experience a lot of time. And she received a lot of feedback that was like a very privileged point of view. And I think all of that is true. But for me, I think it has been successful to lean in and to be at the table and to ask for what you want. And I thought I would do a really good job steering a staff. And, even with my own staff now, I find that people are often too reticent to ask for what they want, because the worst thing they'll say is no. It's like literally the worst thing that would happen. Right. So, I mean, sometimes it's just asking for the job. And I was like, I can do this. Put me in, coach.
Right. And then take it to the races. And the thing that I love about that, Audrey, seriously, is by you doing that, then you embody it. You kind of model, hey, it's safe to do that with me. It's safe. And then people get more and more used to exercising that muscle, as it were.
Yeah, totally.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received as a woman in media? And what's the worst that you kind of said, nah, you politely ignored and said, not so much?
I've received so much more bad advice than good advice, I have to say. So I had a boss, he will remain nameless, who told me, don't ever have kids in the news business. It will kill your career. And this is before Me Too, as you can imagine.
As Elvis said.
He is no longer in the business. That was super illegal. But strangely, I think it was coming from a good place, because this was an era where all of the top editors, they had stay-at-home wives. They had a staff to run their personal life. And he was really saying, like, you're an up-and-comer because you don't have this family to, like, keep you away from work. And that was definitely the worst piece of advice, not only because it's illegal, but because I think maybe a year later I was pregnant. So I didn't listen to it. But I think, the best piece of advice, I have spent various periods of my career trying to be somebody I'm not. And I think, that's an experience of a lot, not just women, but people of color in the workplace, and like that code switching to be what people think you should be is exhausting. And it's like, I'm at an age now where I'm like, F it. It is too exhausting to be who I'm not. And like, if you don't like it, sorry, I think I'm a pretty nice person. I'm very ambitious. I expect a lot of people, but I'm also very generous. But like, I'm not your mother either. So don't expect me to be your mother. I'm not your mother. I'm your boss and your colleague.
Right. No, I think that's so true. But and I bet that really kind of comes into play, given that you're the first female editor-in-chief in WNYC's history. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment, and also a really interesting opportunity to kind of shape and shift and embody how the station can evolve. So what did that mean to you personally? And what did you kind of jump in and say, okay, this is the first thing that needs to be reimagined. This has got to go.
Well, I was also the first woman editor-in-chief at the San Francisco Chronicle, which I think was even more important because it was a bigger organization that didn't have, even the whole corporation didn't have a lot of female leaders in it. Sure. And I think, the newspaper business, even more than public media is like 60% female now. Right. That's not true in newspaper land. And I think, they're very different. I can't even tell you how different these cultures are. They're so different. But I think a lot of times people expect women to be mother figures in the workplace. And when they're not, the knives come out. And they treat you often much more savagely than they would ever treat a man. Ever. Like the things that have been said about me, nobody would say about a guy ever. The negative thing, maybe some of the positive things, but like some of the negative things are like you would never hear anyone say about a man. And I'm not sure why that is and why it's still allowed, but we don't call it out very often. And I think that's, I had hope a few years ago that we were getting over that. And it seems like it's really regressed a lot.
Well, so, yeah, because that's one of the things that I'm kind of curious about in general. As more women start to take the leadership helm in a number of different news and media organizations, one, how does that shift the narrative and the story selection and what aspects of it? And are there still, and you just answered one of the questions I was thinking I was going to ask is, there's so much gender bias that still shows up, regardless of whether you're the boss lady or not. So how do you contend with that? Especially, well, I guess now since you have the finalist Pulitzer thing, that should be able to go, hi, shut up.
No, probably. That high lasts for about 8 hours, and that's about it, unfortunately. I mean, I don't know. I think, I guess I would say it this way. I once gave a speech to a group of Girl Scouts, and I was thinking about what to tell them. They were all in middle school, and I decided to discuss my middle school bully, who I almost want to call her name out, but I won't because I'm mature now. But like, I went through a really hard time in middle school. I think everybody has a hard time in middle school. I had a particularly very rough time, and it gave me what I call like alligator skin. Like it made me want to be successful more than almost anything. Like for a long time, I said like success is the best revenge. Yeah. Now I'm trying to say like happiness is the best revenge or living well is the best revenge. But it really drove me to like sort of damn the critics in a lot of ways. And sometimes that was very helpful. And sometimes it was maybe too much alligator skin. And I think that's what women put on to work to be able to go into it sometimes too, because like so much more is expected of us, I feel, than male leaders.
It's almost like putting on your armor.
Yeah, I really do feel like I may have told you this once, but when I was first named editor at the Chronicle, I was 35. I was the youngest editor, the youngest female editor of any major metro ever, and maybe the youngest editor ever. And I went into a meeting with I would say a low, like a B-level political candidate, like a state assemblyman or something like that. And they asked me for coffee. But they thought I was the secretary.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought about that so much, like, what can I do to like show that like I'm in charge. You don't ask me. You're here to meet with me. So I started wearing heels every day, and I would dress the part every day. And so like armor can be like emotional armor, but sometimes in my case, it's even like what you wear to work every day. So every day you will not catch me not wearing, because it's just like part of the uniform I put on to say like, you're going to work today. You're in charge. That's how it is.
Own it. Take it. So sort of shifting a little bit into leading, right? So how do you guide a newsroom, especially now? It's kind of funny. We'll do a little bit of a deeper dive into media itself. How do you kind of handle and balance editorial innovation, but also all the weird existential pressure without losing the soul of public media, especially where you are?
Well, that's a complicated question, but it's a good one, because I think there's this perception out there in the world that like journalists are ultimately driven by money.
Yeah.
And I just like, I find this such a insane thought that like there are journalists out there doing things because they think that like an advertiser will give them more money. Because I have to tell you, I've never met a journalist like that. I'm not saying they don't exist, like National Enquirer, like really clicky, like news adjacent publications, but like real newspapers, real public media, real reporters do not wake up in the morning and think, oh, how can I make more money today? Because if we did, we would be in finance and we would be making more money doing something else. Like, I don't think anyone realizes journalists do not make a lot of money. They are not in it for the money. They do not have money brain. So I think even if I wanted to, a newsroom is, dozens and dozens of reporters and editors and producers and copy editors and photographers and all these journalists whose job it is to go out and ask questions of people in authority and to give notes about the people in authority. And so if you think about what kind of person that takes, it is also the most uniquely difficult person to manage, because you're managing a staff that has no respect for authority and questions everything.
So how do you contend with that?
I mean, sometimes, some days better than others. I think it's like any job, right? The most important thing is that you have a true north and that you articulate that true north every single day. And, it was one thing for the Chronicle. Here we say our job is to make New York work for New York, period. That is what we do every single day. And we do that in a lot of different ways. We do it through, call-in talk shows. We do it through our website, Gothamist, and we do it through what we decide to cover and what we don't decide to cover. Right. So you're not going to see a lot of what we would call cheap crime on our websites or on our air, because it doesn't actually make New York work for New Yorkers. It makes people scared and they might click on it, but it's not actually advancing what we want to do, which is to hold people accountable and expose inequities, improprieties, and to like use the power of the populace and the media to help people change their own. So once you say like our goal is to make New York work for New Yorkers, if you have a story idea, like the Diddy trial just ended, right? That's down the street. My feeling is like, how does that make New York work for New Yorkers? It doesn't. Then we're not going to cover it. And I think, it makes the argument less, because everybody believes in that mission. And then they can say, okay, well, my job is to cover the court, but it's not that court case. It's this other one where this landlord is screwing their tenant, or the tenant is screwing their landlord, or whatever. That actually exposes something that makes New York work better.
Right. So, and that's a lot about building trust internally, but also externally.
Well, it's about, building trust, but also being consistent. Being able to articulate a reason for what you do. I feel like a lot of people can't articulate why they do things. Even if they have a good reason, the articulation of it is really important. And that's what any leadership class will teach you, right? It doesn't matter if you're running a newsroom or you're running a gas station or you're running like whatever. If you can't articulate what you're doing and what you want people to do, how are they possibly going to know how to succeed?
Exactly.
And I believe everybody wants to succeed. I don't think people come to work wanting to not succeed. So you have to tell them what that looks like.
So, yep. And make sure that they really understand, because I don't know, my experience has been so often people are quick to say, oh, yeah, I get it. And then you realize they really don't get it at all. With the newspaper you did, that's a form obviously of local news, at least with the brands that you had worked with. And now you're doing local radio. Is there a difference or
oh my gosh,
a scope of, where does one begin, or scope of influence that's
oh my gosh, it's so much different. I mean, it's different and it's not in so many ways. I came here, I left newspapers after being in it for 20 years because I thought this organization had some of the same challenges that I had solved before, but I didn't know anything about broadcast journalism. And I was really interested to see what the difference was for those mediums. Now, actually, our largest platform is our website, Gothamist, followed by the radio itself. And what I can say is the difference in the two is that when you hear somebody's voice, I mean, you know that from this podcast, right. You know instantly if somebody's full of BS or not. It's hard to cover it up when you're talking to somebody. You develop a relationship with that voice and that person, and maybe you don't like them, maybe you love them, maybe you just can't wait to hear them every day. Our morning edition host, Michael Hill, who I'm very proud to say that I hired, I love turning on the radio in the morning because I love hearing Michael's voice. He cheers me up. He makes me believe that it's sunny out even if it's raining. Like he's just great to listen to, and you don't get that and you don't get the same kind of storytelling if you can go outside and like record the sounds of New York City. Describing them is not exactly the same, and watching it on TV is not the same. So playing with these mediums has been very interesting. Culturally, I would say it's also very interesting because public media really has grown over the last few decades.
Yes.
And didn't start out intending to be people's primary source of news, as it has become in many cases and in so many communities across the nation. The only local news you're going to get is from a public media station.
Right.
But it grew as sort of a like, we'll tell you what's in the news. And by that, they meant what's on the New York Times and what's in the Washington Post and now we're very much more trying to do local news, well, all kinds of news originally. So I would say culturally that creates a different dynamic in the newsroom because it's something that wasn't baked in to the origin story, which has been really interesting to deal with because it's just so different for me because I was like, how would you not want to go out, get scoops and like uncover the story? And sometimes they're like, no, we just want to tell a nice story. I'm like, no, let's not do that.
No,
let's do something else.
Let's just nice.
Nice and good sometimes, but like sometimes you gotta get in up to your elbows and things.
Yeah.
It's an industry that's really changed a lot. The advent of podcasting has changed it a lot. Like how people commute, like who's in their car every day at the same time anymore? You're not. So like the idea of having a driveway moment where you're like stuck in your driveway because you don't want to listen to anything, like that doesn't really exist anymore. Who has driveways in New York City? We don't have that anymore. So we have to be a lot more innovative and user focused and data focused when we think about how to do what we want to do, which is change New York, make New York work for New Yorkers. How do we do that now with all the different ways that we live?
So that's a perfect segue into, of course, I'm going to ask this, tech, right? There's all these tools. And to your point, there's measurement, that's all of that. And everyone keeps going on and on about AI. So, and ethical AI, is that even a thing? Is it potentially a thing? So with this, to me, the question is actually, can AI ever support a mission-driven media entity without compromising the ethics?
Yeah, sure. I mean, all of these are just tools, and how we use them is where the problem lies. I mean, we lived through the invention of Facebook and Twitter and Craigslist, what that did to the media industry. And at this point, I'm kind of like, I'm a journalist. I want you to get news that you can rely on. And if you get that from my social media accounts or from a video or I don't really care as long as you're informed. Now, of course, the problem is people get a lot of other crap that makes that harder and harder. Mm-hmm. And I think people have become really lazy and disinterested.
Great.
Because there's so much content out there that's more engaging. But, AI is a tool like anything else. It has huge potential to help us with news distribution, with writing, with sometimes people don't want to read an 800-word story. That is okay. That's why headlines were created. And sometimes journalists are like, well, you can't boil my story down to 3 bullet points. Well, did the creator of the headline think that? Probably. Yeah. There's lots of ways to use this technology to our benefit. What's really scary to me is that AI will, I believe, eventually destroy search as a function. And it will destroy the internet. And just like BuzzFeed and others figured out how to play the algorithms to fuel clickbait, I shouldn't pick on BuzzFeed, but they figured out a way to manipulate Facebook, the search algorithms, and everybody else Somebody's going to figure out a way to do the same thing with AI, and it's going to create more disinformation. And it's going to be harder to find real news unless you already have a source that you trust and that is comprehensive enough to serve your need. And I think as traditional media shrinks, that's getting harder and harder to sustain something that has the scale to be impactful and that has enough people supporting.
Right. Exactly. And people understanding how important it is. Like I sit there and I think of, and I'm not meaning to pick on this, but Reddit, right? I can remember.
I love Reddit.
Right?
I love Reddit.
Reddit started. I can remember Reddit started. It went through its hiccups, early days. CTO is a dear friend here of mine. But there's positive, but there's also a lot of hating done on Reddit. I mean, how do you figure out which is worth listening to and which isn't? Because I could also see if one is taking a look and trying to get feedback, you could just say, oh, forget it. I've witnessed this with other journalists. They're like, oh, there's always going to be haters. You still have to listen to some of it, right? Or look at it and get a sense of, okay, it's good because at least I made him hate it. Or I got him to think, or I got him to have an opinion or feel, as opposed to just completely talk to the hand, forget it. They're worthless.
You mean criticism on Reddit?
Yeah. And just sort of like golden name.
I feel like Reddit is a much more civil place than some other corners of the internet. Twitter got to be, I do not go on Twitter anymore. Sorry, X, whatever he wants to call it now. I do not go on Facebook anymore. Like they became so toxic and abusive. I've been doxxed on Twitter. Like I just don't go there anymore. I don't need to do it. I feel like Reddit is actually, because it's people self-selecting to communities, that it's a little bit better. I mean, I think it's great. What I would always say is when people say to me, oh, WNYC, I love WNYC. You know what you should do? They won't even finish saying what they love before they tell you what they should do. And I think that's the most wonderful thing because it means that it's a public trust. I always used to joke, there are two jobs in New York City everybody thinks they could do better. My job and the mayor's. And let me tell you, you don't want either one. But that's an honor that they have. I think where it goes off the rails is our country has mistaken the freedom of expression with the ability to have freedom of thought. And you don't need to always say it out loud. And, deep thinking about issues instead of just shooting from the hip that is a problem that we have.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Well, so with all this in mind, what advice would you give to any young women who are looking to get started or who are in the trenches now and they're feeling a little beleaguered? Will it ever change? Will I ever get up there? What advice would you give them?
Oh, I wish somebody had told me this. It's going to happen. And the thing that I've realized now in my career, the recruiter calls, they dry up for 3 months and you think, oh my God, am I too old now? Am I yesterday's news? I'm not the hot young thing anymore. And then they start back up. Everything is cyclical. You have to believe nothing is forever. And I've way too often in my career and in my life thought this situation right now is the one that I'm going to be in forever. And I just from an old woman, it is not true. It gets better. No matter what it is, it will change. And I think the best thing is just to go in and figure out what makes you excited. If you're in a rut at work, because we all get in those. I just went on a long vacation. I was in a rut and I came back and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this project right now because it gets me excited. And this whole staff is better when I'm excited and in a good mood. And you just have to find it. And I find it in all different ways. I find it by talking to you, listening to a podcast, meeting somebody in a totally different industry who's doing something cool. You can find these little sources of inspiration, and sometimes it doesn't take very much. It just takes something different than your usual. So I actually schedule it into my week, an hour every Friday. I'm find something that you are excited about, or have a conversation with somebody that you're excited about, or introduce yourself to. And if I don't schedule it, it doesn't happen. So that's just me. Other people may not be quite so anal, but you have to make time for it.
Yeah, I think that is such a great idea, and what a great day to do it on, because then you head out into the weekend, and then that kind of gives you a great mood then, percolates, and then next thing you know, you've got story ideas or, just oomph to get moving into new directions. Well, so would you say that that's the same advice, knowing what you know now, you would give yourself?
Oh, yeah. I would say chill out. I would also say I definitely needed to chill out. I always need to chill out probably a little bit. But like, I would say, two other things. The first is each step in your career that you take requires different. It took me a while to understand. Leading a staff of 20 was different than leading a staff of 200 and being in a boardroom. And different things made me successful in those different levels.
Right.
And that's kind of one of those things you have to live it to really understand it, but it's so true. The other thing I would say is like, there is almost nothing, unless you are like a 911 operator, there is almost nothing that needs a response right away. And I feel like the whole world would be a better place if everybody just sat on their responses for 24 hours. And I don't mean like, hey, what are you doing this weekend? I mean like any email that sends my blood pressure up even a little bit, I'm like, don't do it right now. Because like my reaction right now is going to be different than it's going to be 24 hours from now. That is the advice I would have given to 35-year-old.
Yeah. No, you know what? That last one is so true. I mean, I got that advice early on. And so oftentimes what I'll do is I'll write it and then I stick it in drafts. And then I will later on, 24 hours, 48 hours, I'll look back and I will laugh because I've had time to let the dust settle and think, oh my God, get over yourself. What were you so worked up about? This isn't even like, it's not worth your time. Or if it is, okay, if you want to get something achieved or you're trying to shift and influence a decision, let's do it in a way where you actually stand a shot. Because if you get that email that you wrote, you would say, bye, talk to the hand. So
totally.
Cooler heads prevail.
And I think too, there's like, it's one thing for men to send those.
Oh,
it comes off differently when women do it because you get branded or, sorry for swearing on your podcast.
No, it's okay. No, but that's really true.
Totally true. Or you're emotional and nobody will say that to a man ever. And they will always say it to a woman or you're mean or you're whatever. Like nobody says that they will say it about the women. And so, and that's like, I am not going to fight the patriarchy on my own with my emails. So just like, let it sit for 24 hours.
Well, it's interesting. I just had an experience where there was a board meeting I attended and then we had another meeting, a follow-up meeting today. And it was fascinating because I was so thrown off. It was the first time in a long time, so old boy. And I was astonished. I think I was taken aback going, what? And I didn't play it as well as I could have. And today, same crew, I knew what I was getting myself into and I owned it. It was great. And they were better able to hear from me. So it was kind of, act as if a little bit of swagger, but not too much. And then just being me and knowing, okay, where are the soft spots? Where are they going to push back? And then having a response. And
get what you want.
And that's the other thing, figuring out if there's a way. I had to learn this actually with this same group. Some of them are ready to hear from a woman. Some aren't. So then who's the guy in the room who can set me up and then I can build upon? So it's not that I like to do it that way and be so manipulative, but still.
I mean, there's manipulative and there's just reality.
Yeah, true. So true. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, Audrey, thank you so much for all of your many pearls. I look forward to seeing what happens next, WNYC. And we'll circle back. I think that we're headed for some interesting times, especially, let's face it, in your city, recent political situation.
So exciting.
Oh my gosh. And we'll talk about that in a non-political way, everybody. So I don't want to ever be political, but I just think it's kind of interesting from a storytelling kind of arc and that kind of thing. So we'll schedule a follow-up as we get closer to those.
Okay.
All right.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
No dull times here in New York City.
Things are changing. All right. Well, on behalf of everyone listening at Women Advancing, thank you, Audrey. Appreciate all that you're doing.
Thank you. Bye.
Wasn't that great? I am so impressed with the way in which Audrey consistently, from a really young age, has stepped into these leadership positions and just owned it. And And not from a haughty standpoint, know-it-all point. I mean, that kind of gets knocked out of you. But quite a few pearls, I think. But here are my faves. KB's takeaways. First, make a lot of mistakes, but not twice. To me, that shows and demonstrates the difference between learning and mistakes. If you learn and receive the feedback, then you can course correct. If not, sorry, then it's a mistake. Second, ask for what you want, and then shh. Don't do a whole lot of follow-up mumbo jumbo. There's an old saying in sales that whoever speaks first after the ask loses. So don't be the loser. If you know what you want, ask for it, and then let the other person respond. This next one really was key to me. Be you, not what you think people want you to be. Frankly, it's exhausting, and it's also incredibly inauthentic. It's going to catch up with you. One of the hardest things to do is to act and be half-hearted. It just steady energy drain. So don't. Next up, take a beat. Nothing ever really requires an immediate response. So wait 24 hours before responding. I'll often write a draft, and I literally will. I go back to it the next day, and I often laugh at thinking, why was I so worked up about this in the first time? Schedule excitement time or curiosity time once a week where you get to go learn something or dive into something that you're kind of curious about. So rejuvenating, and also really opens you up to a whole new world and new network. And that's where a lot of creativity and innovation can come from. And finally, in closing, it's going to happen. It just is. So be patient. Trust me on that one. Do as I say, not as I do. I'm still always working on patience. And with that, really excited to have you join me on the next Women Advancing.
Thanks for listening. May this episode inspire you to move forward. Be sure to go to iTunes, Spotify, katebyrne.co, that's KATEBYRNE.co, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and listen to even more episodes. Here's to strong women. May we know them, may we be them, may we raise them. Be sure to meet them on the next Women Advancing. Ta till next time.